Good morning. And it is morning for at least 25 more minutes. Today, riding my bicycle kind of inspired me. And today's sharing is called Chains and Cogs. And it brought to mind the machine age, what allowed the Industrial Revolution that changed Europe so drastically in all aspects: culture, governmental, sensibilities. The machine, oh gosh, the machine age, which was worshipped by some as the new God. And my title today, Chains and Cogs, is kind of a recognition of Britain's role both in beginnings of America and the transition into the machine age. Here in America, well, I'm in Taiwan, but I am an American. A U.S. citizen, I should say. Sorry, Mexico and Canada, you're also Americans. You know, in our hubris, those of us from the United States forget and call themselves Americans, which makes Trump's "Make America Great Again" even more laughable, especially considering his problems with our nearest neighbors, Canada and Mexico. Hello, Donald. They're Americans too. Let's make them great too. Can you include them in your caveat? Anyway, it makes me chuckle because he would be totally deaf to what I just had to say. He wouldn't recognize the people from Mexico or Canada as Americans. And you know what? I wouldn't blame the peoples from both of those countries if they were reluctant to recognize themselves as Americans. But I would probably say chains and sprockets, chains and gears. But anyway, riding my bike just takes me back to childhood. And my brother and I used to sneak out in the middle of the night and just go miles in the rural area where we lived in Southern California. Rural at that time, at least. Long bike rides. Sneaking out. And I remember when, probably junior high school, I first saw a 10-speed, and I thought, wow, 10 speeds. And I longed for one. And I can't really remember if I got one or not, because shortly after my early bike riding adventures, I discovered the swimming pool and spent most of my time in competitive swimming and water polo all the way up through high school. and I really don't remember much biking adventures. But here in my retirement days, Hualien had such great bike paths, I got back to riding a bike. And recently, my brother has joined me as he's in the process of moving here. But while he's visiting, we went on many bike rides together, and it was really looking forward to many more in the future. But now I have a 30 speed mountain bike. So maybe I did never get my 10 speed, but I made up for it in my old age. But this idea of watching my chains and cogs work on my bike, the meditative repetitiveness of simply pedaling, coupled with my headphones and music, meditative music that I've collected over the years. So my 1.5 hour to 2 hour bike ride is a moving meditation with the bonus of changing scenery. I get to ride by ocean, rivers, mountains, green grassy parks, flowering trees, blue skies most days with incredible cloud formations. So it's the best of both worlds, getting out and about and focusing on meditative process. But this led me to think about how we bring up our children. And because I'm thinking of my brother and our bike rides together, I'm looking at how my single mom raised us differently. Encouraged us to have different interests. And I don't know now at this point, quite honestly, is if we had propensities towards certain things or not, or is because in nature or nurture. But my brother would get a book named How Everything Works, because he quite early on was a hands-on, taking things apart and attempting to put them back together. Wow. So very interested in mechanical things, and this led to him to an interest in cars, keeping cars, at least doing the minimum maintenance on his cars, but always focused on mechanical. Whereas I would get the visible man, and those of you that don't know, he's a plastic guy with plastic and see-through plastic, and you can see all his organs, and it comes apart, and you can take him apart and put him back together so that you learn where the kidneys go and where the liver is and how the heart and lungs, where the brain sits. And this was because my interest in science was living science. Biology, botany was a particular favorite because I felt a kinship somehow with plant life. So botany. biology. Chemistry went into the, for me, hard sciences that I had to take the classes, but I wasn't really into it. Organic chemistry, I thought because organic, it has the carbon base that's so necessary for life as we know it. I thought that because it had something to do with life, I might be more interested. But my memories of it are struggling through. And as far as the physical world goes, the mechanics, physics, as I knew it in my day, was how things work. Very mechanical. And here I want to mention two transitions. Number one, as I got older, I got more interested in mechanical things, how things work. I never really pursued it too much, but I've kept a goal which is unfulfilled as I sit here talking with you. To know, at least to be able to take care of the chains and cogs of my bicycle. Interested in not only learning how to maintain my bike, but also interested in deeper upgrading, changing the grupo, changing the set, tools. I have a minimum toolbox that I put together over the last few years, but most of my life I somehow survived with just a hammer and a couple screwdrivers. So the first lifetime incoming was an interest in mechanical things, how things work. And I think this came about from curiosity about the universe. Because the universe can be looked at in a mechanical sense. Mechanical sense. I should keep a glass of water here beside me because now that I'm wearing this mic here on my t-shirt, that coughing is right next. Sorry. But my interest in the workings of the universe, coupled with a TV channel here that it's a US channel, but it's all about restoring classic cars. And I found myself I watched this daily. And part of the appeal, honestly, is that the cars that were classic were cars of my day. My high school, early university, 60s, the end of the 60s, the beginning of the 70s. To watch, I didn't know I was living in the golden age of American muscle cars. But I just love this program to watch them restore. And still harbor an interest in getting hands-on, in doing something under the guidance of someone who knew a lot more than I do. But interest in mechanical things. Even though I haven't it's only at the level of interest, whereas basically I could remember none in the middle-aged to childhood. And another transition when physics as I knew it became, or at least part of physics became, quantum physics. This transition was so much closer to my sensibilities, my spiritual interests, so that quantum physics fascinated me. And when they attempt to explain the wondrous workings of the universe, I'm watching, listening, and reading. So an interest in how things work. Has blossomed for me personally. And we'll see. Now that my brother's here and he's Mr. Tools and he'll do a lot of hands-on things. He's talking about woodworking, refinishing furniture, perhaps buying fixer-uppers, real estate, older houses, and refinish them, restore them, modernize them. So it's never too late, is it? But again, time will tell. Is this interest can go beyond pondering, considering, and actually doing. Because I suspect that when you're deeply involved with something, when you're enjoying what you're doing, whether it's restoring a house, restoring a car, restoring furniture, that the enjoyment, repetition, that's why chanting is so hypnotic. The repetition allows your other senses to escape. You don't really need to focus much on the task at hand. You're free to wander. I supported myself as a house painter through my university and became a contractor after, a painting contractor, afterwards a small contractor. But painting was an activity that I started to appreciate the repetitiveness lends itself to reflection. You can be doing a mindful job with plenty left over. My swimming career, I preferred longer races 400 meters to 1500 meters. I preferred because swimming was this repetitive physical activity that lent itself to wandering, mental speculation. And now my bike riding is much the same. That the repetitiveness of pedaling. While enjoying that changing scenery. Swimming. Normally in a pool, but I did a lot of open ocean swims. But that brief time as you turn your head, I was always more concerned in breathing efficiently and continuing. So a different kind of scenery, different kind of enjoyment. But that repetitiveness was the constant. So what I'm suggesting to you, the point I'm trying to make is that change not only is a constant, the only constant, the only thing that you can count on in the physical realm, emotional realm, mental realm, that all things not only change, but are in a continual process of changing. So you can apply this to your own life. If there's something that you've always been interested in, check it out. Now, most of us are busy doing through our, quote, productive, our working, our money-making years to pay the bills, feed the kids, send them to university. It's almost a never-ending list of requirements that all need you to be making money. So maybe it's hard at this point in your life, but when you reach the golden years, when you do have time, consider going back and doing some of the things that have always interested you. The workings of a fine watch. A mechanical watch with talk about gears and gizmos. They're incredible. And the art of working small. I remember when I had an opportunity in the early 70s to sit with a small group of people at the University of Hawaii. There was maybe 10 of us. And the Dalai Lama was there with us in a small seminar setting of graduate students, most of whom were interested or studying or majoring in Eastern philosophy and religions. And I couldn't help but notice that the Dalai Lama was wearing a Rolex. And I got enough. It's the only time that I dared directly speak with him. I spent most of my time listening because I knew that I was in the presence of a very special man. And time has more than proven my observation. So I said, the Dalai Lama wears a Rolex. And to put this in the context, this is at the time when Rajneesh, who morphed into Osho, was busy in Oregon collecting Rolls Royces. I don't know, 150, 200, I don't know how many Rolls Royces he had. So it was always thought of as kind of a not a good thing that a spiritual, so-called spiritual being would collect material things, especially luxury items in multiples. So my question for Dalai Lama with his Rolex watch was kind of couched in the terms of looking for reasons why the spiritual guy would be wearing a luxury watch. And he proudly lifted his robe and he showed me. This was a 1949 or 1948 constructed watch. So it was the same age as I was. And the Dalai Lama said he admired mechanical things. And that's why he appreciated this old antique by then. He called it an antique, so I guess that meant that I was an antique too. This beautiful example of mechanical and engineering. And he shared with me that he studied engineering as a younger man, had always been fascinated by the workings of things, especially finely constructed, such as his Rolex. He so enjoyed sharing with me. So maybe I'm in good company, enjoying mechanics of things, chains and cogs. For me, maybe the Dalai Lama had this interest that it must have been an interest from youth. I guess we're born with certain propensities. I don't know where I fall in that nature-nurture argument, by the way. Is it our nature? Yes. Is it from our nurture? Yes. This is a really good dichotomy, a polarity, an apparent duality, which we know we could go through the process yet again of showing that they're part of a continuum. A continuum that celebrates wholeness. a continuum that can expand and spiral out into the cosmos. So it's our limitation that we can't see the constant, the unity in opposites. We're so caught up in separation, division, our minds making categories, making moral judgments, what's good and what's not so good. Counting, qualifying, quantifying, along with other trappings of our ego in our desperate search to find the uniqueness. We might spend a lifetime looking at our skills. We might wait till we're old like me to begin to want to develop new skills. Time will tell for me, as it always does. Meanwhile, I'll keep an open mind and just be content with knowing that I continue to be interested in new things. Most of us waste some of our best years, and I'm talking about retirement years. We become less and less. We get depressed because we let our job define us instead of us defining our job. We stop reading. We stop exercising the mind. We may start walking in the desperate desire to keep the form alive. But how many people take classes considered to growing in a mental and even better, spiritual sense? Don't miss this opportunity of life. Live and love.